Today I'm going to tie and fish a streamer. This type of method is very underused, especially in the UK. People assume that spooky browns are not predatory and that they don't eat fish. As fly fishermen we cast flies assuming that fish only eat flies. But nutritionally it makes sense for trout to be predatory, and they do eat their smaller brethren and other fish in the river like minnows. So we're going to tie a streamer which basically imitates these type of bait fish that trout feed on, and we're going to fish it and see if it's effective or not. And the way I'm going to fish it is slightly different to the way many people fish streamers. Most people fish streamers down and across. My opinion, although it can be effective, it's a rather lazy way of fishing. I prefer to search and fish upstream rather like dip fishing. To tie this fly, it's a very simple fly obviously. I need very few materials, a very cheap cape, some hare's ear UV from Yanshaman, a very nice material. Also from Yanshaman some peacock dubbing. I'm going to tie it on a jig hook. This is a size 10. And most important of all, I'm going to use a 4mm tungsten bead. It's important that we use a heavy weight with this fly, because the movement of the fly is a combination of using the rod tip against the weight of the fly to impart movement into the fly. So I've mounted the size 10 jig hook with a 4mm tungsten bead in the vise, and I've selected a feather, and what I'm going to do is just match that up to the hook and empirically decide about the length of a minnow, a bait fish. And when I get this, I'll wrap the thread in, tie the thread in quickly. And simply bind down the feather. This principle of course has been around for a long time, particularly in sea fishing for species like mackerel, but it's not often used in fly fishing, which is odd because it's a very simple and effective way of producing a bait fish body. So there we have the body of the fly. That will move beautifully in the water. Now we add a bit of meat to the body using some of the hairtron, and I'll use this light material. This has nice elements of sparkle in without being over the top. These smaller bait fish are not very bright and glistening, so we don't want anything too bright, but a little sparkle adds that little bit of attractiveness. So we simply roughly bind that in. There's no point in making this particularly neat, and the body of the fly is almost finished. Finally, I'll use some of this nice rusty peacock dubbing, and the reason for this is it has nice little red flashes in, and this gives the appearance of flaring gills from a bait fish. And again, just very roughly tie that in. As I said, this is a very simple fly. And we'll see if simple is effective later on the river. Finally, and this is optional, you could actually tie off the fly at that point and use this as a bait fish streamer. But I like to just add a little bit more movement. I just tie in the same, oops, sorry about that, just the same hackle, and this just gives the impression of pectoral fins in the water and adds a bit of extra movement to the fly. And this fly is all about simplicity and movement. So I just trim that off, and finally whip finish by hand. and we can see even in the wind now that fly has plenty of natural movement. Very, very enticing. And there we go. Well, I'm going to be fishing the streamer I tied earlier on. The river's very high. These are good conditions for fishing a streamer and for fishing nymphs as well, but we're going to try the streamer today. And we're going to be looking at water like this, nice deep pockets that hold potentially big fish. And we're appealing to the predatory nature of the trout with this method. And fish see small fish washed down by the fast current, and they have a split second to grab that fish. It's very nutritionally advantageous for trout to eat a larger meal like a fish, because it means it has to eat less, it has to work less to sustain itself with nutrients. So it's a very good meal of fish. It's a very good method in this type of water. Let's see what we can do. What a lovely fish that is. There's the string that we tied this morning in its mouth. Beautiful. Trout, look at those fish at the top.